Yeah, so I think 12 is for the body camera software. If you remember, we have the fleet cameras, and so that's about 3,000. It's the licensing agreement that we had with them. So that's for, I think we started, when did we get those?
16, I believe.
So we'll have to be looking at that as a cost down the road a couple of years. But if you remember correctly, part of that program was a free upgrade in the camera the actual hardware. So if they come out with a new camera, one of them breaks, we can get a new camera for no cost. So.
Okay, and this isn't in here, but I did mention it to Rebecca, and just so the board's aware, but when I went to ICC, the radios that we purchased, the county paid for that, what was it, 10 million or something for the tower? And they have advised all the communities that in 10 years, when it's time to replace it, so that's the useful life of the investment, that it'll be up to the municipalities. They're not the ones that are gonna be paying for that, so I just wanna pass it on. So you know.
All right, let's move on to planning and development project. Any clarification, questions?
In the text, I just thought when we redid this, job description, we may wanna talk about the village's comprehensive plan and maintaining and updating the village zoning code. Or something about zoning code.
Southern Forest Village Codes related to zoning.
Maybe just draft, maintain and enforce, I don't know, I know that's gonna be a large part of what our planning department's gonna do.
Is it? I didn't know we had passed the zoning thing.
They do make changes like this, they bring, plan commission, the solar and he will be bringing before us, it's not just enforcement, which sounds like inspections, it's also the proactive stuff that they're maintaining zoning code
Okay.
and GIS.
And expenditure, yeah, I had CDA also as a question here as to where that charge.
And that is in miscellaneous revenue.
Okay.
What's the,
And again, I've got my note to check on the exact composition of any CDA funds in those two miscellaneous items. I'll give you feedback prior to the next meeting on that.
Okay.
what's the, just refresh my memory, what's the other service contract fees?
Other service contract fees are hypothetically for contracted inspections to fill for vacancies or on vacation. All the numbers in red font are placeholder numbers based on current expectations pending the board's decision on organizational status of that department.
And what is the, just so I'm clear, what is the current expectation, what is the assumption that you made in this budget? That is filled?
Current full staff replacement.
Okay.
So why is fringe then going up 33.7 under health insurance?
Well, if you replace a staff that wasn't taking village benefits with one that
Oh,
took
wasn't,
village
okay.
benefits, that would result in an increase. And again, the village has historically been pretty fortunate for a 5-person department to have that low of a benefit level. It's just kind of coincidental the way how that worked out.
But, so we upped the other service contract fee, meaning we need more contracts, but we didn't change, so we changed one but not the other.
Right, this is still 5 FTE, right?
That's correct. Again, with the general understanding that we are likely not gonna get a commercial, electrical.
Electrical.
Correct. Right.
And that's gonna have to be contracted under any scenario.
Okay.
And then it would change if the person got that licensure, and that's what happened in the case of David Hampton.
Okay.
Do we had a discussion, lengthy discussion about staffing level and planning department at our last meeting, and then we said, do we wanna talk about it here? Or, we gotta hash it out sooner or later, so I don't know if we do it here or do it on the 22nd. Might make sense to do it now.
I would strongly encourage you as a group to start providing direction prior to the 22nd. On any topic that we're talking about. One of the things that Mark had discussed with me earlier today is he went through in more detail, just to kind of provide some perspective. On October 22nd is what we've deemed as the wrap-up, okay? So there are some larger pieces to this puzzle that you may choose to leverage in one way or another. Some that involve staffing, some that don't, such as solid waste utility or public fire protection. While it sounds like a simple change to make on your end, it's gonna require, any of those larger tickets really require him to go back and redo a substantial amount. He legally has to submit a notice to the paper on that Wednesday, so you meet on Monday. Would need to publish the budget with decisions that you've made on Wednesday, which is an extremely short turnaround time when you go to wanna re-verify numbers and go through that. So the more direction that you can provide as a group, in whatever way, shape, or form is more helpful to staff at this point, just because we're now gonna be bumping up against a clock, and we're required to pass a budget under state law by a certain time.
Just so everyone knows what the county, we did it that night, like, right after, right? We'd run the numbers and calculate what your tax rate was gonna be right on the spot.
So would you expect that same
No.
turnaround here?
Nope, I'm just wondering what,
I can tell you what your tax rate will be, but preparing the public notice
Right.
is really what takes the time.
Okay. Got it.
And, yeah, it might be different.
Yeah, it might be different. For reinspection fees, unless we're talking about, do you want to do code enforcement?
Yeah, it's up to the board, I don't care what order we do things in.
The thing I'm trying to grapple with is, so we've got we got the list, and if the target number, if we say, we wanna limit the levy increase, well, if we say 0, we gotta get all the increase out. If we say 2%, we can go up 228,000. So even normal, it's 294, so I'm just trying to, what are the bigger pieces we gotta put together here, to get, if we wanna get down to, whittle down to the target, and what are those bigger pieces?
And the bigger piece is what I heard from the first one, and I just wanna reiterate this on the record, is we can get down very quickly by making 3 decisions that we're being asked to make, and it's just shifting it off the property tax and putting it onto user fees. Doesn't reduce the 6.8% cost increase to a household, but it would, on paper, look really great, and you can walk out of here tonight. So I think the bigger challenge, at least in my mind for myself, as a board member, is how do we decrease the cost to the resident, to our community members, because that's what we've been asked to do. So I don't want that distinction to be left off, because it is very easy, you just take the first 3 and you can get to your 2% if
Well,
that's what you're shooting for.
Oh,
In part, I mean, there's also a significant opportunity to evaluate capital expenditures, which we haven't gotten to yet.
For this year though? Oh, you mean small cap?
Well, the annual capital budget, things that are funded through property taxes or state aids. But yes, the challenge is, how do you move budget numbers when 75% of your costs are either contractual to other government agencies or staff costs without impacting or making responsible service level decisions. Because even if you hold vacant positions open, you're impacting your services. Well, our departments will try to maintain those in the short term. Again, deferring replacement of staff that you've authorized is kind of counterproductive to,
That's subjective, but thank you.
well, yes, it is.
That's a policy.
Let him finish that.
I apologize,
know.
I understand what you're saying, and it is
It's a point
subjective.
you've made before, and we're
Nobody
running out
wants to
of
do
time.
that, it's not an easy decision, so I just don't like when it comes, we continually hear that we're being mean.
I understand that, yes, point well taken.
I think I've been pretty clear in prior meetings that I think at a halftime code enforcement, we would still have ample time to be, keeping up on problem properties in areas where we have a lot of rental properties and duplexes. And we could run on, and those properties are based upon complaints, I assume primarily, and if people felt that the property on their block wasn't being maintained, they could call and complain and it would be dealt with. So I think we lost a big workload with time of sale. And that was a large portion of the code enforcement person's workload. We talked about alley inspections and how that, I think, is an unfair burden onto those of us who live in the area of the village with alleys. And frankly, people in those neighborhoods feel it is somewhat intrusive to have someone driving down alleys, peering into their backyards looking for code violations. So, I feel there's room to reduce the activities in that area without affecting the ability of the code enforcement function to do the issues that it has to do in the southern part of the village and other places with duplexes and rentals that are not being kept up. That's my feeling and that's about between $40,000 and $50,000 savings, so.
So I liked your thoughts about, vacancies and attrition, and that's sort of what I said at our last meeting, and what I still really believe is that I think we can, I do understand your point, and I think that that's a really valid point about code enforcement, but I think that we have the opportunity to leave it up to the planning department to decide where that cut comes from, whether that's code enforcement or not, and what makes the most sense, which kind of aligns with your thought of, let's work through attrition and let's not lay people off and let's not fill vacancies as we currently have. So I mean, that's what I really think.
I do go with that. That's typically my perspective,
Mhm.
unless as a legislator, I'm hearing that there's a service that residents would prefer to be cut.
Sure.
So that's the difference is, I'm perfectly fine, like, I don't know, DPW, like, whatever, something comes up, but if there has been a service that has consistently been said, that I've heard, this is something we want to give up, then I'm gonna make a suggestion to be more specific this year. And I just wanna share with you that I had spoken, not that this is gonna make a difference in your view, but I heard it, so I'd like to share it, that I did speak at the ICC, at the fire board meeting with some of the other mayors and village presidents, and I was unclear on why the code compliance went away, that law, and I thought, I'm gonna get something. But from the input from one to two of them was, we were around, it was on the books, the residents revolted, they thought it was harassment, and so the majority of municipalities went and lobbied to get rid of it. And so no other North Shore community kept their code enforcement officer. So what I think I hear Trustee Amenta saying and proposing is, we would be doing, even at half-time, that is significantly more than what anybody else has done once that code went away. And so, no personalities here, there's no person involved, this is just strictly like history of why was it abolished, and, there's some pretty strong opinions from some other communities. Now, we have different factors, so I don't wanna say that they're all the same, I'm just sharing it because I did not know that history, and it's complement to what I'm hearing from those people that are on alleys, so, so I have no problem being specific to say, because I think inspection services are, that's something that's, we want development, we want growth, we want rehab, and that's something I wouldn't want to go down.
So Jessica, what are you saying to leave an entire FTE vacant? Because we're saying just leave half an FTE vacant.
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine with that, and letting the planning department determine where that,
How to do
how
it.
to make that happen.
And what did you want to say?
I wanted to say that if we are looking at attrition, and not filling vacancies, then I think it's really important to be proactive about adjusting service levels. Because I think, managing vacancy rate, through attrition and to try to, fill gaps is one thing, but expecting a reduced staff to provide the same level of service is totally unreasonable, and I don't wanna put our organization in that bind. As a board member, I don't wanna be in that bind, I don't want staff to be in that bind, and I don't want department heads to be in that bind. So as long as we can come up with some either agreement or agree that we're gonna back staff in adjusting where service levels can most reasonably be reduced, and the impact felt the least, and we back them up, then I'm comfortable looking at a vacancy rate, sort of, if it's not really a policy, but a management tool. That seems more reasonable to me. In general, I don't support cutting services, because I know there are a lot of residents that are saying, I'll pay. And I also, the bind that I feel like we're in is that we could do great due diligence and reduce the cost to the taxpayer, and that bottom corner of their tax bill is still gonna go up because there are 4 other taxing entities on the bill that we share, that whole, we're not
Just not adding.
right, we're just not adding to it. So optically, I think it's always confusing, I think, for residents. So, that said, and I also agree with Trustee Mars, I think we're also in a bind because we reduced that base, and then that's a 1-year savings, but then the next year, but I don't, I just say that I'm a lot more open, as long as if we don't fill vacancies, we are essentially reducing services, and I don't, because a department can't do the work of 5 people if it only has 4.5. And I understand that in the case of planning, the majority of the board is in support of not doing as much of that service. But in police or in DPW, if we don't fill the vacancies, it's unreasonable to think that the rest of the staff would just absorb that without some type of proactive.
Can I add to that? Because I totally get that point. So one thing that can be done is, if we are collaborative with our administration, is sometimes you would give temporary salary increases for doing more job duties. That's something I'm open to. I just want to throw that out there. Maybe, whenever.
Mhm.
You can control that. Secondly, it's the reason I don't think we're looking at staff, any permanent thing, is we don't have staffing organizational studies. So hopefully my hope is that by the end of 2019, this vacancy factor, if we are able to adjust a service level that we and the administration feel that that's in the benefit of the community rather than something else, then we could take that vacancy factor away.
That's right. Yeah, it could be
Right?
just a 1 year.
I just feel like
but
it's-
I'm getting I think we're talking about 2 different things. I mean, there's a vacancy factor that we might put 25,000 or 30,000 and say manage vacancies, but then they're specific to the planning and inspection department of are we reducing FTE from 5 to 4.5? I mean, those are 2 separate things.
Yeah, this is a vacancy.
So is there, I don't know what,
What is the current, is it to add another, replace a half a position or contract for half, or where are we at?
Is option B and option
Oh,
C were
okay.
different, maybe we need a
Okay.
refresher.
No, I don't.
Preference from staff was to have a part-time staff
Okay.
rather than.
And then what's the
contract.
savings then that we can possibly put on the list if we eliminate this half time?
But was that the preference, can I ask? Because Rebecca mentioned that contracting might be easier. I just heard 2 different things.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a preference. Did you voice a preference at the last one?
I don't know if I voiced it, but I have a preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be for a part-time in-house person, just to maintain the cross, education between the inspectors and to have the flexibility to, schedule things more openly as opposed to only contracting when we need them for the 2 hours or something and then not being able to, utilize.
So that would have been option C.
It was actually a revised option B, is my.
Revised option C.
Option B, or 2 or whatever it was
Okay.
was to contract out for additional, inspection services. After I had talked to the inspector more closely about how that would affect his, day-to-day interactions, he voiced a preference for, can't we actually just get a part-time person in-house to help me relieve, the day-to-day, then that person could take, walk-ins or phone calls when I'm not here, as opposed to keeping all of that interaction on one person and only allowing him to, send the contractor out for a job. So this way, if we were allowed to have an in-house part-time inspector, Justin could go out, or the inspector could go out, and the part-time person, if they're there that day, could answer the in-house questions. If that person's not in-house, there's no one there to answer that question. The inspector that we have on staff comes back and has all those questions waiting for him. So
But we had I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but if code enforcement just say was halftime and
Correct.
And so you would have 1.5 people, right?
Correct.
I mean, already, without hiring
Yes.
another person.
Yes, so yeah, with that option, so that's the revised option, so option 2 initially had the full-time inspector, full-time code inspector kept. So we're kind of mixing, things together, so yeah, in the scenario we're talking about, we'd have 1.5 and you could contract out, or 1.5 and you could have the 2 full-time inspectors, just mixed under 3 different job descriptions. One mixed,
I thought
one
I heard
full-time.
Rebecca say,
Really low.
no, because I thought I heard Rebecca say that, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's, the workload changes. And so it's easier to have contracted inspection services rather than a new in-house person. The other municipalities that I've talked to, the other mayors and village presidents, they all are on the same contract. I mean, they're all with the same company, because there are some bigger, like, commercial inspections that it makes sense because it's a state building code, so it just makes sense to be very,
But he's saying he wouldn't use a contract person to be behind the desk and answer questions,
Correct.
people coming in. So it would be, I think what he's saying is, with full-time building inspector, half of Tim's time, and then the other half is on code enforcement, and then half time, so there'd be 2 FTE by
Right, and-
3 people on inspection and half an FTE on code enforcement.
right, and I'm just speaking against that for a second, and the only reason I say that is because I've heard from, developers this week, and I've also heard from other communities that there's a benefit of having a contracted for the larger projects, because it's very consistent among communities. So like when we talk about tips or whatever, like different, so there is a benefit that some of the actual developers feel that is preferential, and I wanted to share
Well, I
that.
think that the issue of exactly how this would be implemented is secondary to the number of FTE that are we comfortable going from 5 to 4.5? Trustee Warren?
I just wanted to chime in here. I agree with Trustee McKagan on the service levels and being clear on them. I am comfortable with going from 5 to 4.5. I've heard from residents on kind of all sides of the issues. I'm inclined to agree with Jessica, or with Trustee Carpenter, I think that allowing planning and development to decide how to staff that, I'm okay with that. I think that my question would be whether, if it's something where we feel like it's not, we're getting a lot of feedback from residents and it's not